My friend, it's kind of funny that you and I are getting the chance to speak. And the reason why is because I looked back at the very first interview we did several years ago, and that was at Canadian Music Week. When you
I
came and
vividly
introduced
recall.
yourself, you
Yeah.
came and introduced, I said, let's just do this. And what I found amazing was, your spirit, your strength, and everything else. But you never know. And you were telling me about the records and everything, but you never know how things are going to work out. Now I look at you today. You're in the black and gold. You got what was that, Motown hat. You got your own emblem up in front of you there. You got some gold behind you there too. And I can see the awards and everything else. You have come a long way. Congratulations on your success and congratulations on your drive.
Thank you very much. And it means a lot coming for you because one of the things I really respect about you, you do connect with artists at the beginning of their career or certain parts of their career. It doesn't have to be the beginning. Like, weren't you hanging out with Usher like 20? Now he's doing the Super Bowl. So it must be cool for you to see artists come in that full circle moment. And just to speak on Usher, it's so cool that we have a chance to, kind of bring Usher into like a legend status now when
Yeah.
he does the Super Bowl. And I think that's great for the next generation of artists that we are crowning kind of our new Michael Jackson.
Amen to that. You talked about next generation. That is something that you have cultivated for many, many years. You are about the next generation. And one of the important things that we're talking about right now is because it's Black History Month as we speak, you on tour, next generation, you are educating. Talk about what you've been up to, my friend, because I've seen the posts, I've seen the pics, I've seen some of the vids, I've heard the screams, and I've
Yeah.
seen that big smile of yours, man. What's going on?
I love being back in person in schools because this week I did a virtual event in front of about 50,000 youth from across the country. And I hadn't done virtual in a while because now we're back in class. But virtual is still a great way to connect with so many people. But I love being back in schools because there's nothing like being there in person. And what I really find about Black history is people are always asking me, is there progress being made? And of course, it's significant progress. And when I tell a story about Rosa Parks or Viola Desmond, just the fact that we don't have to deal with segregation anymore, that's huge progress. That isn't that long ago. But it's also telling these stories and realizing, sure, it's great that you know who Viola Desmond is, but like when I actually tell the story, they're in shock. So I think it's still important to keep on driving home the messages that some of these people are giving us. And finally, the other thing I try to tell kids is these are just regular people. Like, I mean, we call them legends, but to be Usher, you have to be an incredible vocalist. You have to have dance skills, which come innate. But like one fact I stumbled upon was Martin Luther King was given a C in public speaking in
Wow.
university when he trained to be a minister. And we think of him as the greatest orator of all time. And it's also important to notice that he's the greatest freestyler of all time because that speech was a freestyle. He wasn't planning to say, I have a dream. But Mahalia Jackson said, why don't you tell him about your dream? So I love freestyling and being able to tell kids the facts behind some of these people.
When did you come up with this idea about being in schools? And because I can remember when you actually were physically
Yeah.
touring this. Are you still physically touring this, or is it just on virtual, or is it back and forth?
It's back and forth. I mean, like
Mhm.
the virtual show on Tuesday, did 4 shows in person on Wednesday, did 3 yesterday. I did 3 at 2 different schools today in Sarnia, Ontario. So I had to drive, which took 5.5 hours in the snow yesterday. And then I drove back to Toronto right now to be here with you. So, um, it's great. I do 2 to 4 shows a day, every day until right around the Junos, going out to Nova Scotia and seeing my man Maestro Fresh West go in the Hall of Fame, which is another Black history moment. And so glad that I can tell kids about more about Maestro because teachers will all know him, but it's also great to be able to educate kids that, yeah, there was somebody before Drake.
Exactly. Now, what do you call this? Do we have a name for this tour? What do we call it? And I remember us talking about it when it first started. How did you come up with this idea?
I saw you at Gary Beal's event, and I'm a huge Gary Beal's fan. Such an incredible artist, and obviously a black artist from Canada and a black Nova Scotian. But it's called Songs of Freedom. Black Canadian 365 is what I always branded it because it's important to do Black history throughout the year. But each year I want to have a theme. And last year I redid Bob Marley's Redemption song. And I hadn't released it yet. I just figured this is a great time to do it. And there's that line in that song from Bob Marley, said, "My songs of freedom, all I ever have." And I thought this was a great way to kind of fuse the work that I'm doing in schools and the theme of Black history with a soundtrack. Because I talk about Viola Desmond. People know she's on the $10 bill, but I always tell my friends, I always carry a $10 bill. I could be in Europe, I could be in Amsterdam, Croatia, and I have a $10 bill to show people that in Canada we have a Black woman on a $10 bill. So I came up with the song, I Got Violas in My Pockets.
You have always. Oh, by the way, even before I get into the next question, do we know if Gary's going to be out there for the Junos?
I think he's going to be. I think so.
Okay. Okay. What's the reaction from the kids when they are learning this? Because this is going to lead into my next question.
It's really incredible because it doesn't matter if you're in Toronto or Scarborough or Markham or in a small town like Petrolia, Ontario, where I was at today in front of 5,000 students, or a town of 5,000, but in a non-racialized community. I think it goes well. And also because it's Canada and there's Black history everywhere. So in the town of Petrolia, 20 minutes away, there's the Josiah Henson Museum, the first Black person from Canada to be on a stamp. And wherever I go, I play a video about Josiah Henson that's from the museum. But then afterwards, I say there's another reason why I played a video, because don't you think that actor does a good job? And today, because my parents live in Petrolia, people were shouting out my dad because I'm like, yeah, it's my dad. But there's so much Black history there. One of the first race riots in Canada happened right down the street from Petrolia, Ontario. There was segregation in Dresden about 50 years ago. So I think it's really important to tap in to communities that have Black history. Or when I'm in Grand Forks, British Columbia, very small community, I'm able to talk about Saul Guy and his contributions to Black music in Canada, from working with the Rascals, to working with Lauryn Hill, to working with Diddy, to Diddy ripping off the Rascals and putting Barrington Levin in Shine's video. But everywhere you go, you're going to have Black history. And I think it's important for kids to know that history in their local communities.
This leads into my second question, and you can correct me if I'm wrong from what I saw, but I do believe you had posted a video about a young man who came up to you with a question, and you were in a rush to get a plane ride or something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say any more. I want you to tell this story because I think it's very powerful.
When you do a presentation, you ask for questions. And typically at a high school, a lot of people don't ask questions, or they don't ask tough questions because they might feel uncomfortable. So afterwards, some people come with their phones or signing autographs, but it's always cool when you see kind of somebody just hanging back a little bit that wants to talk to you a little bit more one-on-one. And for this guy to be like, I'm a rapper, I want to be a musician, and I'm going through a hard time, and your message really connected with me. And that's when you kind of step outside of yourself, because this is in a community where there's very few racialized people. And you wonder, like, what does that kid have in contact with me? Why can he connect with me? But it also made me think that growing up, I lived in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, where there wasn't a lot of racialized people. And hip hop was something that I connected with, these stories from rappers in Los Angeles and New York. So it showed to me the power of music and how it can touch people. I mean, It doesn't matter if you're even alive or the same age, because, I'm wearing Motown, but when I throw on Michael Jackson or Marvin Gaye, I feel what they're saying, and I'm learning from them, and I'm connecting with them as well. So it's great to be able to kind of take that stigma away of what a rapper is, or a rapper talks like this or acts like this, or this is what a real rapper is doing, and I think for kids to know, oh, he's got music out still, like he's not retired or anything, but he's choosing to put a positive message in there, which, it's important, because I listen to gangster rap, but Ice-T and Tupac had some very powerful messages. KRS-One as well. So do your music. I mean, sometimes I listen to NWA, there's not too much of a message in there, but have a balance to it, and it's great to have that message in there.
You even took it a step further with another person who actually was struggling with the fact of something that I've dealt with. From I remember from the conversation I saw that you had dealt with too. He asked about racism because he was basically the only black person in his, I think, class or school. Can you talk a little bit about that conversation?
And it's funny because that was another one where I was going right to the airport too. But yeah, it's very difficult for youth these days. And it's not just that one student, it's something I hear again and again, and it's really disturbing. And I first kind of saw it when my son was playing Fortnite, and you have this audio headset on, and I just kept on hearing the N-word. And you can't tell if somebody is black or white or what race they are, but you can tell that they're young. And, being the dad that I am, I'm like, hey, man, you shouldn't be using that word. But I did it in, a cool way. But the end pass is something that a lot of kids are being told is, I'm your white friend. Can I say the N-word? And so, that's one of the things that I spoke with him about, and I talked to youth about. And it's tough, because it's tough to put the onus on kind of the victim of this, the black kid, to stand up and do something when really they shouldn't have to. But unfortunately, that's the situation we live in today.
Yeah, no, I can actually even remember during COVID, when COVID was opening up, over at the laundromat, and this a white woman came over by me, and I never even saw her before. I never met her before. I don't know. She actually came up to me and said, "Excuse me, what do you want to be called?"
Mm.
And I was like, "What? Well, do you want to be called black, African, Canadian?" And I just said to her, "Call me whatever you feel like it," because I knew where she was trying to go. I didn't like it. And she didn't understand that. She thought she was trying to be one of the good ones. She didn't get it. How do you explain to somebody whether they are, and I want to hear how you feel about it, who is Caucasian or white? Because I've even heard that you shouldn't even use the word Caucasian. You should say the word white. To explain that, even, how do I put it? Even when you think that you're doing right, you're coming off racist.
I'd say welcome to my life. And the reason why I say that is because growing up in these communities, I learned at a very early age how to be able to deal with things.
Yeah.
And to realize what ignorance is simply without knowledge. And you could look at these things in different ways, and many people do. You could, be upset with someone and say, you should know better. You should know this or that, or this is inappropriate, because it doesn't have to be the N-word. It could be somebody saying, well, you're not really Canadian. Like, hey, where are you really from?
Yeah, yep.
And it's ironic, because I'm really more Canadian than most people. Being that my mother's from Saskatchewan and my dad's from Nova Scotia, and I'm a 6th generation Black Canadian. And so then some people could say, well, you're not really Black, your mom's white, so why don't you call yourself mixed? And I look at it as identity is something that we each have a chance to define ourselves. I define myself as Black. By no means does that take away that I have a white mother. I even wrote a song about it called Appreciate You. But I think it's important for everybody to define themselves and to take and pick and choose which battles you want to battle against, because sometimes people aren't going to get the message. But I think it's okay to say, I'm a Canadian. I can also say I'm a Black Canadian. If somebody identifies as a Jamaican Canadian or an Italian Canadian, that's okay too. Because a lot of it is how you were raised by your family and the community you grow up in. So I try to be respectful to different communities, and you try to teach, but you can only lead them so far.
I hear you there, man. I hear you there. How long is this tour going on with the virtual with the kids in schools? Are we going past Black History Month? Because I know Black History Month is hopping for you. But as you've said before too, man, this shouldn't just be 1 month. It should be year round.
Well, I started in British Columbia in January for 2 weeks doing Black history. As soon as school was back on, that first day of school, I was out in Surrey, BC, and I am booked all the way till the end of May, at which point I'll jump on a plane and fly to South Africa. And I'll be performing and speaking at a music conference in South Africa, the African Rising music event. And I just feel that's a great way to end this tour, because Nelson Mandela has always been a very big hero to me. But it's funny that I don't hear his name anymore. I actually did this afternoon, so it was cool when I asked kids, who do you know in Black history? Because 9 times out of 10, the first name is Martin, second name's Rosa. But I remember when I was growing up, Nelson Mandela was Nelson Mandela, and then it was Martin Luther King. So it's I think it's cool for kids to learn about Nelson Mandela as well, and I can't wait to be in his home country.
Well, I was there a year and a half ago,
Mm,
November, and had an amazing time. I was there for South African Music Week. I
mm.
was there for a couple of days, and it's an amazing experience. So I am so happy you are heading there as we speak. And even though you're heading down there, are we looking at new music in the future too? You talked about heading to the Junos. We talked about this part of the tour. Any new music coming out for 2024?
Can't stop, won't stop. One of the greatest things about being a recording artist in 2024 is the ability to record music and release it. I remember, years ago when we had CDs, you might work on a song for a year or two and keep it and hold it and say, I got to wait for my album. Whereas, I recorded Violins in My Pocket last week. And so over the last 6 months, I've been recording a lot of material, because I knew that this project was going to be, that theme of songs of freedom, that there was going to be more songs with a message and Black History Month. But that's not my whole story. So my next album is called Just to Finish the Story. And I can't wait to showcase that, because one of the things I love about hip hop is being able to explore different concepts, different themes, different topics. And I don't want to just be, heavy handed all the time with here's Dio with a message. I like to have a good time as well. I'll be having a great time at the Junos. So I can't wait for that, and collaborating with a Juno nominated artist, Morgan Tony and Keith Mullins, who produced that project. And we got some folk hop coming. So good old Cape Breton folk music with dash of hip hop in there.
Speaking of finishing the story, I can't end this interview without us talking a little bit about wrestling.
Yeah.
How you feeling, man, with the main event that it looks like finally Cody's going to get a chance? Cody Rhodes is going to get a chance to finish his story with Roman Reigns. It looks like that is the main event of WrestleMania. How do you feel he's finally getting a chance to that when The Rock almost snuck in there to take his spot?
I think WWE is awesome right now because it's got a bigger buzz than it has had in years. A little disappointed by the Royal Rumble. I'm always looking for some old stars to walk through the ring, but now I realize that a lot of the stars that we grew up on, I don't know if they're walking through that ring. Because, this is 30 years ago at this point. Corporal Kirchner, I think he's still alive. I don't know if he's coming back in the ring. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, God bless him. But I think it's great that Cody Rhodes is wrestling because he's a multi-generational performer. He's earned his way into this. but I had to fit this in for you, Rudy. I thought it was very interesting what The Rock was saying the other day. And he was talking about how family is so important to him and his ancestors. His ancestors are important to him. And did you know that my latest song on Songs of Freedom, Freetown, has a connection to The Rock's family?
Ooh. He's Canadian because his dad Canadian.
So his dad, do you know how The Rock got his name?
Yes, I know the whole story, but you explain it. I know the whole story, but you explain it.
So The Rock, his dad is Rocky Johnson, born in Amherst, Nova Scotia. But his dad changed his name. So he changed it from Wade Bowles to Rocky because of Rocky Marciano, undefeated Italian boxing champ, and Jack Johnson, the first Black United States heavyweight champion. And he did that partially because before he became a wrestler, when he left his house at 16, moved to Toronto, he was a boxer.
Yeah.
He used to fight that guy, Muhammad Ali. But how did The Rock's family come to Canada? How did his Black side come to Canada? They were Black loyalists. So a Black loyalist is somebody who fought in the American Revolutionary War, which made America, and the promise was made to slaves that if you fight for the British, we will give you your freedom. As they're losing the war, they also threw in a farm. So when they lost the war, a lot of Blacks migrated to Canada, specifically to Nova Scotia, and many of them moved to a town called Birchtown. And a few months ago, we went down to Birchtown, me and my videographer, and we recorded a music video and told the story of Birchtown, where a community where the first race ride in North America happened. I thought it was important to do this story because as Canadians, we like to think, well, we were the Underground Railroad, the end of it, the promised land. Martin Luther King even called it heaven. But there was slavery here. And not only slavery, there was intense racism. So what happened was with that group in Birchtown, Nova Scotia, they migrated to Sierra Leone and built a colony there. And there's a statue there even of a leader, Thomas Peters. It says underneath it, Nova Scotia. Sierra Leone Africans came back 3 years ago to celebrate their ancestors. But I just thought it was cool that The Rock's family is connected to that story and Black loyalists. So when he's talking about his ancestors, he should also be talking about his Black Canadian ancestors. And I think it's great that he's being back involved in wrestling. I think it's great that he's embracing the role of a heel because that's what really got him going, that got his heat. And whether he fights against Roman Reigns right now or not, I love the mystery and the intrigue because I think that's what wrestling always capitalizes off on. And it's so much better than having to talk about Vince McMahon.
You know what? I wanted to talk about Vince. I just thought, no, we'll leave Vince out of this. People can look it up and just make sure you're old enough to look it up. I'll leave it to that. But the last question is, Cody, Roman, the story ends for those two. Who ends up with the title at the end of WrestleMania?
I love it because I don't really know, because you could go either way. You really could. Roman Reigns has had an unprecedented run with the belt. I think he's really grown into a superstar, which the WWE hasn't really done it. It's challenging to make a John Cena, somebody who really explodes in pop culture. So part of me wants to see him win and also to face The Rock again. But I love Cody Rhodes because he's not just resting on the laurels of his dad I love that he's a great performer. He's got great mic work and he's really earned it. Yeah. But in the end, I think I got to go with Cody. I think Cody should win.
I'm going with Cody, man. And just so you know, I interviewed Cody years ago over the phone, even before he became Dashing Cody Rhodes. And one of the things he did we talked about his dad, and he said, I never wanted to be my image in the ring of my dad, but I wanted to be part of the, legacy of my dad. So that says a lot, man. Anyways, let's wrap this up. Brother, once again, congratulations with all your success. Thank you so much for always doing these interviews. More importantly, thank you for representing who you are, because the way you represent yourself, you represent us at the same time as well. And that is something very, very important. When they talk about Black excellence, man, your name is always included. Congratulations, man.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. It's always a pleasure. I always look forward to these chats.